And now, going places and doing things.
Hi, welcome back to the committee program. This is another edition, although we haven't done one yet this season, of Going Places and Doing Things, where we get to the mechanics of actually how political communications practicing happens. And with us is friend of the show, Jamaa Bickley King. Last time you were on the show, you were in the wrong Virginia. You were in West Virginia. Are you back in your beloved Virginia?
I am back in my beloved Virginia. Unfortunately, it's under new management, and the guy is batshit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to. Unfortunately, many predictions that were made on this show have come true, and there is a Paul stalking the land. But speaking of a Paul in all of our lives is certainly Facebook, the criminals who run it, etc. And actually, you had been mentioning something about the conversion funnel. And recently on the show, actually, I butted heads a bit with Dr. Emma Bryant, who is someone who studies Cambridge Analytical a lot. And I was sort of like, I think a lot of people, don't totally understand. I'm not saying she doesn't, but I'm saying in our conversation and people talk to me about it, don't totally understand what it is Facebook is doing or what other people do on Facebook to do nefarious things, especially on behalf of the right wing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just sort of is this black box where it's like, and then something happens and then Nazis, it's like, and you were mentioning to me how similar it is to the commercial world. Someone mentions the Remarkable. I've now said it on the air, Remarkable. All of you are about to be flooded with crazy ads for this thing. That's the digital writing tablet. Anyway, how is that experience also the same as what is happening? Just break it down for us, real simple, so that we get it.
But basically, when we were talking back and forth, I was saying how like the same conversion funnel to get you to buy shoes and tires, beverages, Big Macs, whatever, movie tickets that they use in order to...
Cadre cigarettes, the people's cigarette. Enjoy Cadre cigarettes.
Exactly. They send it to like a group of they'll send it to 1 million, 2 million impressions. And that means how many static ads they'll put in front of somebody. And through that, they know they're going to get maybe 1,000, 500, 200 conversions of people actually buying the product and or service. Similarly, if you put 1 million impressions in front of somebody who has already been primed for disinformation or is not yet primed for disinformation, you're going to convert maybe 500, 200, 50 or whomever number of people to become radicalized or to migrate and start putting them in the ladder of engagement and activation and prime them for activation or activate them on social media using that same conversion funnel. And it's it's not a matter of if they're doing it, is how many of them will they convert and where are they? And this is where it's gotten much more sophisticated. And you mentioned Cambridge Analytica, which is basically the analytics behind it. The analytics doesn't turn on the funnel. It just either means, are you going to get 500 people to convert, or am I going to change it so it gets 540 people to convert or 480 people to convert? It's basically measuring and kind of doing the testing and changing the ratios and looking for that mix of people in that custom universe that's going to be your initial people that are going to get impressions to get the most conversions on the back end of the funnel. And that's mainly what I've been seeing and some others, but it's been exasperated. But here's my problem with that is that people look at it in a vacuum and they're not looking at the setup work that was done to really get that thing to move and accelerate and get a lot more conversion than you normally would. I think Charles Blow said it best. He said, in order to have people do despicable things, you need to take away their understanding and their apathy. And then I also couple that with what Voltaire said. It says, in order for somebody to get you to commit atrocities, you have to get them to first believe in absurdities. And, you put all those together with the conversion funnel and you have this ready-made community who is already have, vilifying empathy, vilifying understanding, believing in absurdities. All in that, you put that down there and they're ready to commit atrocities. And not only are they ready to commit the atrocities, they believe that they are righteous in doing so. Because in their worldview and in their reality, they are the hero. They're fighting lizard men, fifth column cabal of Democrats that are eating babies and sucking their stem cells, and they're the heroes trying to fight that while everybody is brainwashed but them. And that is the really scary part. And then you also have targeted atrocities. Like you have targeted absurdities against like our election apparatus. And so they're already committing atrocities against our democracy. Like there are people who have run for office and they have changed laws. So no matter what happens, if it doesn't get the result they want, they can like totally throw out wholesale votes in some areas and or go back and change them because they believed in the absurdities of those lies.
Though.
Huh?
In the customer service side, on the front end, is it, or did it start out and is the acceleration due to some sort of technical know-how or the sort of data gathering apparatus? Or is it a question of because right wing is so well resourced that you can just put a lot of effort or a lot of resource into what is not maybe the most efficient process, right? You're talking about getting a few conversions for thousands and thousands and thousands of folks. This may not be the best way to sell soda pop, but it may be the best way to create fascists. Well, right? It might not be cheap is what I'm saying.
Oh, it's not cheap, but here's the thing. It's like I believe this is where Russia did all the heavy lifting. It's like once you have that algorithm figured out, and once you have cultivated that core set of people, once you know what you need to do and you've invested like the literal hundreds of millions of dollars and all this manpower into figuring out, all they have to do is look at what they did as the blueprint and then follow and just chase it for literally an incredibly fraction of the cost. And depending on if they have a large enough volunteer base, almost no cost, because the CPM cost on Facebook is really, really cheap. So like if you can go ahead and start up a Facebook page and then go ahead and you already know what you need to do for your custom universe of people to send out these ads because you have done all the prospecting digitally already, it is easy to get them to activate and convert on doing something ridiculous or actually commit an atrocity or support your candidate of choice, whichever one comes first.
But there's nothing special, right? There's nothing special about the messages that become the most prevalent other than perhaps proclivity for polarization, etc. But what is it that sort of holds the left back, I guess, in more strident online campaigns of information?
Well, it's not that it doesn't hit us
culture
also.
Thing.
Well, it doesn't hit us also since we're naturally more skeptical, and we ask follow-up questions, and we aren't primed as well in a Pavlovian response to committing these issues. It's not that we don't have certain things that prime the left. Like if you want to send the left into a tizzy, you can say the following words: racism. You can say police brutality. And we are like ready to go. Boom. You know what I'm saying? But however, we want to look at it and then we stare at it for a little bit like, okay, maybe that wasn't a thing. And there have been attempts for them to penetrate the progressive sphere because I think the original plan was them to kind of get both sides to be a powder keg and light and then blow up. Because the whole thing, I think the original plan of like the disinfo machine coming from foreign actors was chaos. They wanted chaos. They wanted to blow up. They want to destroy the democracy. They want to show destabilization. They want to show that this is a stupid thing so they don't have to keep on doing it overseas. I think that didn't go well was because, believe it or not, they had trouble penetrating African-American social media, which changes so fast.
No, we know this was really overblown, right? The idea that anyone was able to sort of change the minds of Americans through sort of a few Facebook posts, I think, has now finally kind of come apart a bit. But it's important, I think, because what you say shows that online communities actually reflect real communities and that the community itself is what's of value. So sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. And I think what happened was that they tried to do that now. And then you had this weird moment where, it came to a head during the pandemic, which was this massive stress test of all political engagement where usually on the left, we have face-to-face engagement is our go-to thing, and that was taken away. And now we had to basically do what the Republicans did. It's like, we got to do everything on air. Like, and the Republicans are like, we're totally going to door to door because COVID is this myth and it's no worse than the flu. So we sent people door to door, which is how you got a election where, the top of the ticket went in one direction and then the bottom of the ticket went another. So and that's because you had one stuff committing to the grassroots engagement and one group saying we're not going to do that, and then another group chasing the actual presidential engagement. And in my opinion, had it not been for Trump catching COVID several weeks before the election, I'm not sure we would have pulled it out. It's like, that whole episode was hilarious to me. It's like, I think Michael Che had a joke about it. It's like literally making a joke about belt buckles and then having your pants fall down in the middle of your set.
No, honestly, I think, right, without COVID happening, Trump wins by double digits. With COVID happening, he still squeaks it out, and he actually had to get COVID, and it had to be within months of the election to lose. It was like a lot of things actually had to line up against him.
Exactly. It's like, it wasn't because, and it upsets a lot of people inside. It's like, but when I look at the numbers, it's like, we didn't win it. We just managed not to lose it. It's like, at no point can I say this is where we imposed our will on the electorate. Many of us on
the show would agree with you.
Exactly. And so, but no.
I was going to tell you something about Europe that's interesting in terms of Facebook audiences. But we're talking about Trump, so I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to finish your sentence.
Oh, well, I was going to say that, I was going to say more about the digital stuff and like how we found out the limitations of it and basically how it does not speak to the community groups that we want. And it was a tale of two presidential campaigns for the progressive movement where like we did the opposite of what we did during the Warnock Ossoff runoff in Georgia, where we were at the doors, where we were getting a lot more sophisticated digitally, and that showdown ticket, and that drafted heavily off of the Ahmaud Arbery work that was done previously in the southeastern part of Georgia, where we were winning for the first time, mainly because community groups were organizing against the Ahmaud Arbery murder and lynching that were African American, where the local elected said it wasn't a problem, but everybody knew it was. And through that organizing and work, they were able to draft off of existing community engagement and just avenues to voters who were not as activated, immediately coming out in droves for Warnock and Ossoff. And I think that plus a host of things they did in the Asian American community and the Latino community, put those things together, and you squeak out like a 25,000 vote victory.
How much do you know? Because I actually use this as an example sometimes about Senator Ossoff's congressional race in 2018, the one where he spent $60 million and lost by 9 points.
It was
because one assumes that they were doing all of these, all of the right tactics that we're talking about now. One assumes.
No,
were they actually not, or is it a question of them not working?
It was like, we want to run a congressional campaign, but we don't want to engage African Americans in a state that is so largely African American. That was the first go around, and he had
it was scaring off white suburbanites.
Well, no, it's like they felt like they didn't need to, like there's this whole idea and notion in African American engagement when it's a non-African American candidate, or even sometimes when it is African American candidate, that the high watermark of African American engagement will be whatever we're going to get. And they use the Obama number as the high watermark of African American engagement, even we know that's not the high watermark of African American. The Doug Jones special blew that out of the water, where like we were, they said, well, you're only going to get this percentage of African Americans. When Doug Jones had his special, the African American voting percent was like, I think 3 to 4 or 5 times higher than what Obama got. during his run. And I think even the raw number might have been higher in terms of African-American votes. And it's only because they actually did the work and invested in going into those communities. And then you saw the difference in the Warnock stuff is that you also had Stacey Abrams, Fair Fight doing stuff. You had New Georgia Project, which was doing African-American engagement. And none of those pieces of work there, plus the Ahmaud Arbery stuff, where there was all this concert years and years of organizing and work and investment and doing the door knocking and the community engagement that is actually it was like Latinos, AAPI, it was African American, and centering them and trying to engage them beforehand had a fertile ground so Ossoff could win. He did not have that before, and it was this whole white voter celebrity piece that's out there. And people have to understand Georgia used to be a Democratic stronghold for a good hot minute. And Max Cleland was a legitimate senator there. And there's a reason why we haven't done there, because there is no rural African-American outreach. There was no rural African-American investment. There was very little African-American voting investment for a state that had the highest number of African-American voters, highest number of unregistered African-American voters, and the highest number of African-American voters that are registered that don't vote. But yet no one will put any money in to improve those numbers for a community that 90% of them are going to throw the switch your way. There is no better ROI you're going to get in voting. And it took Stacey Abrams and Nsé Ufot and a host of other really brilliant Black women and leaders to do that organizing work and get the investment in there to show that it pays off, which is like something that I think that you're going to see the progressive community going to have to deal with as there's an incredible shrinking percentage of white voters that are going to be the majority of the party. And it's not that they're trying to take place of them. It's just that we need to find the yes and conversation and do something we've never done in the history of the world, is figure out how do you do a multicultural democracy. And hopefully we can figure that out, because if we can't, it's going to get really ugly.
Yeah. Very quickly. So it sounds like you are at least relatively, well, no, let me put it in a different way, because you're never relatively optimistic. You're a foul weather friend like myself. Exactly. I like to think. So in the massive headwinds the Democrats will be facing generally, and with the drag that an unpopular president will bring on that, are you still bullish on Stacey Abrams in Georgia, just because she does have a foundation that hopefully is sort of built out of stone and not out of straw?
I've always felt that Stacey Abrams was like a good half a cycle ahead of the state. You know what I'm saying? It's like she is the perfect person to do it. She is absolutely what they need. I think the world of this woman. I keep wondering if they had like another half a cycle or a whole full year of organizing, she would absolutely, it wouldn't be the odds would be in her favor for a change. But she's still lagging behind the organizing. And it's also, the voter suppression work that they're doing, the change in the campaign voter ID laws, that makes it more and more difficult on a regular basis. But now it's, I feel like she's just slightly ahead. But if there's anybody in the world that could pull this out, it absolutely would be her. It would be her team. She has some of the best and the brightest people that I think that are in progressive politics in her corner. She's been bringing in some of the most talented people that I respect in the place to like do this work. Whereas when I judge a lot of these campaigns by their back end talent, and people saying, Jamaa, what were your reservations against some of those people before? Like in the other ones, like I have not seen any of those people do the things that we need them to do. And as opposed to with the Stacey Abrams team, I'm like, I've seen these people totally pull rabbits out of the hat. They have like done some amazing shit, and they're going about it smart and they're going about it intelligently. I still think that our data and technology need to improve on engaging people of color. And I think that is something that is lagging, and we're trying to work through that now, because the data targeting for people of color has always been not as accurate as we would like for the white demographics. And the main lesson that we learned from
it's sort of like heart disease.
Exactly. Exactly. And so one of the main lessons we've learned about the Ossoff Warnock race was that when you can get Latinos, African Americans, and Asian American demographics, and you improve your data targeting, you get a considerable lift and the margin of victory that you need to win. Because we basically made up some new stuff on the fly to improve that targeting that panned out, that showed that we need to do this nationwide. And I got serious worries because we haven't figured that out in all the states. I mean, and we still haven't figured out what we're going to do about the voter suppression stuff. Beto was talking about, I'm going to run in Texas. I'm like, they threw out 20% of the absentee ballots. I'm like, what do you want me to say, man? You putting the cart before the horse. Like, I'm going to win. I'm like, did you fix the voter suppression thing? Like, what do you want me to say? Oh my gosh.
No, and it's not even centralized in the messaging, which would be the other way to do it, is just to make it the platform itself. What advice? Here's what I wanted to ask you to close this out here. Although we will have you back very soon, but in Europe, Facebook has turned off political audiences based on identification of political party, and also by newspaper. This is, I think, in an effort to sort of have less of what you're describing happening in these funnels, disrupt these kind of, I can make these audiences with enough sort of effort and then, bombard them with whatever. What advice do you have for progressives? What would you do if you found yourself in that position, organizing in Virginia or elsewhere?
I am
not being able to target outside of culture and demographic.
I am suspicious of that, to be honest, because even if they turn off their internal selection criteria, I still believe they have something, and unless they turned it off, which I think this is what they need to check for, did they turn off custom universes? And a custom universe means that I went out and I know what people I want to target, and then I match them against Facebook, and then I send that out as an audience, which in many ways is more fucked up than the selection criteria that Facebook has, because at least that they pick the people who are 18, subscribe to this newspaper, and from this party, because it shows up on the why you're seeing this ad feature. If you do a custom universe, they're going to say, like, they wanted everybody who was over the 18 that lived in this country, and then they'll say, and possibly other demographic information. To me, that says it was a custom universe. And a custom universe, the only people who know who are in that universe is the people who actually matched it to Facebook's profiles, which means you can have even more fucked up shit in a custom universe than you would ever see in a Facebook selection criteria.
So this is another reform online that is going to end up helping the powerful and hurting the less so.
Exactly. This is not a transparency move. If Facebook wanted to make the transparency, they would have the people say, like, you have to divulge what is in your custom universes if you're matching to that. And if they don't do so, there needs to be, all this digital conversation is, there needs to be analytics reform. And analytics is now the new segregation by computer. And it allows people to create new realities. It allows people to be more polarizing, but it doesn't look that way from the outside because it's a custom universe. And you need people to have to expose what their model is. They should be able to, they need to register it like the patent office and say, these are the ratios and these are the people that are made up in this thing. It's like 1 part African Americans, 30%. 30 years old or younger, plus people who are in a machinist union, minus people who own a car in a suburban area, plus people who are out there and married with 6 kids, minus the people who are over the age of 60, who all that stuff needs to be exposed so people can say, like, oh, this is exactly who they're talking to when they're sending this ad. The corporations in them won't do it because they see it as a secret sauce. But I think they have been bad actors enough for this stuff where they don't get that latitude anymore.
Totally. Yeah. You know what? We know. We get it. At some point, we get it. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. As always, it is a delight, a pleasure. And I want to have a third thing because I like to make drum beats that way, but I didn't plan ahead. And so I'm just dribbling off at the end. But it's always nice to see you, and we will have you on very shortly.
That was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.